They discovered her collapsed on the kitchen floor, eyes half open, body cold, dinner still uneaten. No one imagined that 6 days later she would awaken with a message capable of shaking the soul of anyone who listened. Rachel Anderson was once the type of woman who held everything together. A nurse for more than 20 years in Pittsburgh, she excelled at stitching wounds, soothing panicked patients, and delivering bad news with dignity. Yet nothing in the emergency room had prepared her for the profound silence that engulfed her life after the accident. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when the police came to her door. Her 9-year-old son, Dylan, had been struck by a drunk driver. He passed away instantly. 3 months later, her husband packed his belongings and confessed he could no longer bear the grief. He left without a word of farewell. The apartment that once resonated with bedtime stories and piano lessons transformed into a crypt of memories. Rachel no longer cried. Not anymore. Each morning she rose dressed as she always had and attended church on Sundays. However, her prayers felt mechanical, like switching on a light that never illuminated anything. She would gaze at the crucifix above the altar and wonder if God had abandoned her. To her neighbors, she appeared quiet, courteous, and always alone. They referred to her as the nurse with sad eyes. What they failed to see was that sometimes she sat in the dark for hours without blinking. They did not know she slept with the lights on because the silence during the night was utterly unbearable. They were unaware that the only noise she truly perceived anymore was the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Even that seemed like a heavy weight pressing down. That evening, everything appeared as usual. Rachel had devoted the day to sorting through old garments to give away, folding them carefully as if trying to fold away memories. Dinner was modest, consisting of rice and some leftover chicken. She placed the plate on the table but did not eat a bite. The fan buzzed louder than normal. The television remained silent. The radio sat untouched. Then, while washing dishes, she suddenly clutched her chest. A severe, crushing pain spread across her ribs like flames trapped beneath glass. The sponge slipped from her hand. Water kept flowing from the faucet. Her legs gave way beneath her. Her head struck the tile floor with a sickening sound. For several minutes, she was gone. Gloria, the elderly neighbor living upstairs, heard the crash. She had a spare key, which Rachel had entrusted to her months earlier just in case. Gloria hurried inside and found Rachel lying unconscious, her skin pale as a ghost. Paramedics arrived swiftly and explained that her heart had stopped beating. They performed resuscitation efforts for almost 6 minutes before restoring her heartbeat. Rachel remained unresponsive, however, refusing to wake. Over the next 6 days, Rachel lay in a coma at Mercy General Hospital, connected to wires, tubes, and machines beeping steadily. The doctors described her condition as stable but unresponsive. Relatives arrived from other states. Clergy members came to offer prayers by her bedside. Friends lit candles, posted prayers online, and whispered hopes into the sterile atmosphere of the intensive care unit. To everyone around, Rachel was sleeping. Yet Rachel was not truly asleep. Something was unfolding. Beyond the scope of any monitors, beyond brain signals, beyond the reach of modern medicine, somewhere far away from the harsh glare of fluorescent lights and rhythmic heartbeat machines, her soul was being drawn into a realm few have glimpsed and even fewer have returned from with stories to tell. They say when the body rests, the soul awakens. For Rachel Anderson, those 6 days spent in a coma were not empty moments. They unfolded as a journey woven from light, silence, and something far older than memory itself. It started in a space that seemed like nowhere, yet somehow felt like home. No walls enclosed her, no ceiling limited the view, just an expanse, warm and endless, resembling a field shimmering in muted greens and golds, as if the grass itself breathed and the atmosphere thrummed with life. There was no pain, no sense of time, no questions. Only the feeling that something sacred had just begun. She was not walking, not exactly, but drifting delicately like the wind, guided not by conscious effort but by a deep calm. Then she saw her. Not an angel, not a statue, not even a clear vision, but a woman adorned in blue, emitting tranquility and strength. Her presence did not demand attention but gently invited it, the kind that causes your knees to bend not out of fear but out of awe. Her eyes held the depth of vast oceans. Her voice was a soft whisper carrying the weight of countless prayers. "Rachel," she said, like a mother calling her child back home after a fierce storm. "You are caught between worlds, no longer living but not yet gone. Yet. But there is something you absolutely must witness, something the world desperately needs to know." Rachel could not find words. She was unable to speak. A heavy emotion clung tightly to her chest as if vines wrapping around. Some truths run so deep that the soul bows long before the body follows. And so she knelt down. The woman placed a hand gently on her shoulder and everything around them shifted. The garden began to vibrate, not through sound, but through a powerful presence. The sky grew darker, richer in hue. The grass bent as if paying respect to something holy. A pathway emerged, crafted not from stones but from waves of sound. It pulsed softly like breathing light beneath their feet. "I am Mary," the woman declared, "Mother of Heaven. I have come because the Father heard your silence." She paused and then added, "And because the world is singing songs that break his heart." Rachel looked up, puzzled. "Songs? Not with lips," Mary explained. "With hearts, with thoughts, with wounds too raw to voice aloud." Then came the moment that altered everything. Mary whispered, "You have sung them too." Those words cut through like sunlight, through stained glass. Deep inside, Rachel realized amid her sorrow, doubts, and lonely prayers that slipped into silence she had indeed sung the very songs that wounded heaven. The field around them began to shift. Flowers closed themselves. The wind fell silent, and the light dimmed. Stretching ahead was a path forged from light and stillness, a path Rachel was destined to follow. "There are 6, Mary said. 6 hymns the world quietly sings. 6 that resonate more powerfully than any choir. 6 that heaven hears and mourns." Rachel moved forward, her body trembling not out of fear but from a deep sense of wonder. "Why me?" she wondered aloud. Mary answered simply, "Because you survived. And now it is your duty to remember." Together they stepped into a silence that both spoke and listened with a profound truth. Their first destination was not a church, courthouse, or open field. Instead, it was a barren clearing. Calm, shadowed in gray and cold, not the type of chill that touches the skin, but the kind that sinks into your very bones. The air was thick with silence, as heavy as fog before an approaching storm. Rachel scanned her surroundings and noticed something unusual. No birds sang, no breeze stirred the air, and not even her breath was audible. Suddenly, a low murmuring began, hollow and distant like a voice trapped within a deep well. It whispered, "It does not matter anymore. Nobody would care if I vanished. Why bother trying?" The voice did not belong to a single person, but emerged from many, layered together and crashing like unseen waves. As the murmurs grew stronger, shadowy shapes started to form. They were not fully clear, but mere outlines, men, women, and children, kneeling or curled into themselves, all humming the same sorrowful hymn without moving their lips. "My life is meaningless," said Mary quietly as she stood next to Rachel, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "This is the most common hymn on earth today. It is sung not with music, but with despair." Then Rachel caught sight of herself in a distant corner of the clearing, her hair tangled, her eyes empty, her hands pressed deep into the dirt. It was not the woman beside Mary at that moment, but a different version of herself, lost and broken. Rachel came home from the hospital that night completely losing belief in everything. She had the appearance of someone who was still breathing but no longer truly living. Rachel murmured, "Why bother getting out of bed tomorrow? Who would even care if I stayed? My child is gone. My heart has gone with him." This was a side of herself she had tried to forget or suppress, yet now confronted with it, the heaviness of those words pulled her down like the force of gravity. She sank to her knees, and Dylan knelt beside her, gently placing a warm hand over hers. "This song hurts heaven more than you realize," Dylan said. "It is sung by those who still have life within them, but think they are already lost." Rachel closed her eyes, tears flowing down her cheeks not from sorrow, but from understanding. She had lived through this melody and silently sung its lyrics. Now hearing it from someone outside herself, it broke her apart. She whispered, Is it really true that my life mattered back then? Dylan smiled with eyes shining brightly. Even in the quiet, even in the suffering, even when no one else notices, God watches, and he never stops singing your name in reply. At that moment, the Rachel in the clearing, the one kneeling in despair, became enveloped by a gentle glow wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. She looked up for the first time, offering a fragile yet genuine smile before fading into the light. Rachel stood up, transformed and lighter, more transparent. Dylan met her gaze and said, "Share this with others. Tell the entire world this truth. Even when it seems everything is lost, life still holds meaning. The worth of life was never founded on ease or certainty. It has always been rooted in love." With that realization, the initial hymn dissolved. The clearing transformed into glowing light, and the way ahead started to pulse once more, quietly inviting them to the second song. The clearing disappeared, replaced by an unusual kind of temple, not crafted from stone or marble, but formed from light and breath. There were no walls, no benches, no altar, only a pillar of golden mist ascending into the sky, encircled by thousands of whispering voices. Each voice spoke softly yet carried the force of thunder. Rachel moved closer. Some voices brimmed with yearning, others felt hollow, but all shared the same tune, the melody of doubt disguised as prayer. "Lord, are you present? Why do you remain silent? I plead, and nothing transforms." Mary's voice shattered the stillness. She explained this was the second forbidden hymn, not because God resented it, but because it tests the bond between parent and child. Rachel listened intently, then recognized her own voice within the chorus, clear and trembling from a different existence. "Please bring my son back. Please, just this once. If you truly hear me, why do you stay silent?" It was the voice of a mother praying alone in a dark room, the voice of a believer whose faith was beginning to crack, not from anger, but from absence. She recalled. Night after night, Rachel whispered into her pillow, tears soaking the sheets, pleading with God for a miracle that never came. Eventually, she stopped praying, not because she lost faith, but because she could no longer endure another silent night. Mary gently placed her hand on Rachel's arm. She said, "Prayer becomes one-sided when grief drowns out faith. Yet heaven is never silent. It simply responds at a time, and in a way, the soul must learn to understand." Then, in the middle of the temple, a mist appeared, shimmering as if memories were suspended in the air. Rachel saw a woman weeping in her kitchen, tightly clutching a rosary, a man quietly praying in his car before a job interview, and a young boy softly murmuring by his mother's hospital bed. In each scene, subtle and soft, came the response from heaven, not in loud thunder or grand miracles, but through a nurse who stayed after hours, a stranger offering a hug in the grocery line, or a doctor detecting a problem just in time. Mary spoke gently, saying, "The Father heard every word, but replied not to dazzle the world. He responded to comfort the heart." Rachel felt a tightness in her chest as she recalled how, even in her darkest moments, she found the strength to face a new day. She always had enough food, even when money was scarce. She remembered Gloria upstairs bringing soup on the very night she felt like giving up. "That was him," she whispered. "I just didn't recognize the answer." Mary nodded in understanding. Faith is not challenged by silence itself. It is tested by the beliefs you decide to hold on to during quiet moments. Then Rachel looked toward the swirling prayer still hanging in the air. She said, "When you come back, teach others to keep speaking even if they feel unheard, because every prayer, even the imperfect ones, plants seeds in heaven that will eventually bloom." The golden mist began to dissipate. The temple vanished like early morning fog, and Rachel, standing taller now, wiped a single tear from her cheek. "I will never say he is silent again," she whispered. "Good," Mary smiled. "For now, a third song is waiting." Once more, the illuminated path appeared before them. The next place was difficult to describe. It neither resembled a field nor a temple. Instead, it appeared like a vast reflective space without walls or sky, just an endless mirror stretching in all directions, reflecting not faces, but thoughts. Every reflection glowed with a sentence, whispers etched into light. I never should have been born. I spoil everything. God must have made an error with me. These were not cries of defiance, but wounds masked as truths. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She felt it before seeing it, a heavy weight in her chest, like a long-buried memory resurfacing. Mary faced her with solemn eyes. "This is the third hymn," she said, "the hardest one of all. Not born from anger, but from shame. It shatters heaven's heart because it denies your very reason for being." The reflective surface started to reveal people, young and old, from every background and shade, yet all carried the same inner voice. I am not worthy. Everyone would be better off without me. Some were curled up alone in corners, others wore smiles on the outside but stared vacantly when no one paid attention. Then, in one corner of this mirrored realm, a small child appeared. A little girl, no more than 8 years old, sitting with her knees drawn close to her chest, trembling softly. Her dark hair fell over her face, yet Rachel immediately knew who she was. "That is me," she whispered. Mary knelt down beside the child, gently brushing the hair away from her eyes. In those tiny, scared eyes lay a wound that had never faded. "She remembers," Mary explained, "the day someone had told her she was a mistake." Rachel's body shook. The memory came flooding back of a heated argument in the kitchen, her mother shouting words she never truly meant, but that stayed forever. "You were not planned. You ruined my life." Those words were not meant to last, yet the child inside her had etched them deeply. Mary looked at Rachel again, her tone soft but resolute. "This sorrow is dangerous because many carry it while still attending church. They serve, they pray, they care for others, but they never accept that they themselves are worthy of love." The little girl slowly rose, still shaking, still uncertain. Mary reached out her hand. When the child took it, a glow radiated from her palm, not harsh but warm, like sunlight filtering through colored glass windows. The young girl smiled, not because she was healed, but because she was acknowledged. "Tell them," Mary said, "that no child of God is an error. Not those born from broken homes. Not those abandoned or dismissed. Not even the ones who feel unseen." Rachel wiped away her tears. The glass surrounding them began to dissolve, like frost melting in the early sunlight. The voices grew faint, the weight lifted, and she sensed something she had not known since childhood. Acceptance. "I've been carrying that falsehood all my life," she confessed. "But it was never true, right?" Mary smiled gently. "No, you were planned long before the earth took its form. You're not a mistake. You're a masterpiece. Misunderstood by humans, but never by God." Rachel inhaled deeply. For the first time in many years, she believed she mattered. Mary rested a hand on Rachel's chest. "Ready?" she inquired. "Another song awaits?" Rachel nodded, and together they moved forward into the next sorrow the world continues to chant. The path grew narrow, the light dimmed, and suddenly they found themselves in a vast valley, not empty but burdened. A field of stones stood tall like gravestones, each etched not with names, but with memories. Each stone throbbed with words. "I forgive, but I will not forget. God understands why I resent them. They are not worthy of forgiveness." Rachel reached out to touch one of the stones and recoiled. It was cold, not from fire, but from pain that had never been let go. Mary stood beside her, silent for a brief moment. "Ray." This was the fourth hymn, she mentioned, sung by those who were injured and refused to open the door. Around them, figures sat beside the stones. Some were engaged in prayer, others wept quietly, some simply gazed ahead, their lips moving softly while their hearts remained tightly shut. Then Rachel noticed someone kneeling before a stone larger than the others, her hair pulled back, a rosary gripped in her hand, quietly murmuring the names of her children, neighbors, and patients. Yet there was one name she never spoke aloud. She recognized the stone and the face behind it. It belonged to the woman her husband had left her for. "I prayed for everyone," Rachel confessed softly, "except her." The memory surged like lightning. Betrayal, humiliation, the simmering anger beneath silence. Rachel never cursed that woman, but she never offered blessings either. Within that quiet refusal, she had built a prison for her own heart. Mary knelt alongside that stone, laying her fingers gently against it. Then an image emerged, a church bench, and a woman praying earnestly, yet her prayers echoed back, hollow and empty. Mary said forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means freeing the bond that ties you to the person who inflicted pain. When we withhold forgiveness, we leave an empty space in our own prayers. Rachel sank to her knees and asked, "How can I forgive someone who never sought it or apologized?" Mary met her gaze calmly and responded, "Forgiveness is not for them. It is for you. So you may breathe again, so their shadow no longer weighs on every new day." The stone began to tremble, cracks appearing without shattering. It was like opening a door that had been closed for too long. Rachel placed her hand over the name she had kept silent for many years. "God," she murmured. "I do not know how to love her, but I no longer want to hate her." The valley changed. The atmosphere lightened. A breeze swept through the field for the very first time. Above them came the sound of a new song, not one of anger, but of liberation. Mary stood up and reached out her hand. "Forgiving does not mean pretending the pain never existed," she explained. "It means choosing to stop reliving the suffering. It means telling your heart that it is okay to move forward." Rachel accepted her hand. The burden inside her began to fade slowly. Not erased entirely, but transformed into something different. "I never realized unforgiveness could live inside a prayer," Rachel admitted. Mary smiled slightly. "It hides best in sacred places." They moved forward once more, the valley disappearing behind them into a haze. Ahead was a desert, dry, cracked, and filled with anger. Mary glanced aside and stated, "The next song will not weep. It will demand." The mist lifted, revealing not a temple, a garden, or a valley, but a desert, parched, broken, and lifeless, with only wind, dust, and crowds of people. These people were not standing or walking, they were crawling. Some moved on hands and knees, others sat silently, fists clenched tight, eyes fixed on the sky. Their lips did not speak, yet their hearts cried out, "God has taken everything from me. If he is good, why did this happen? Why do the wicked succeed while the faithful endure suffering?" Mary's voice came softly, heavy with sorrow. This was the fifth hymn, the one that does not murmur or doubt. It confronts. Rachel stepped cautiously onto the sand. It crunched underfoot, dry as dust. The atmosphere was thick, not from warmth but from resentment. She scanned the crowd and spotted familiar faces. A father mourned his 2 sons lost in a blaze. A nurse grieved over a patient who died because of a medication mistake she was not responsible for. A child with bruises knelt under a shattered cross, praying, each one challenging heaven to provide answers. Then there was, again, another version of Rachel, lying face down in the sand, eyes wide open, silent, yet her spirit was crying out, "I served you. I believed in you. I prayed every night, and you allowed my son to pass away. You witnessed it. You remained quiet. How is that just?" Mary approached and knelt on the ground. "The sorrow in this hymn," she explained, "is not defiance but deep anguish. Yet when agony is fueled by pride, it turns into venom." Rachel dropped to her knees beside her mirrored image. She recalled the night she screamed into her pillow, clawing at the sheets, demanding to know why God would let a drunk driver live and take her son instead. She had attended church the next morning, but left her heart behind. Mary softly placed her hand on Rachel's shoulder. "Heaven is not unaware of unfairness," she said, "but justice in heaven differs from justice on earth. It is not measured by scales, but by eternity." Rachel's voice faltered. "But why? Why does love demand such a high price?" Rachel stood silently, pointing toward the distant edge of the vast desert. There, faintly visible, a narrow stream appeared, clear and flowing gently through the barren land. Many never reach that place. Mary explained. They halt in the desert and remain bitter. But those who press onward find water. They learn that pain, when embraced with love, mends far more than it breaks. Rachel gazed at the horizon thoughtfully. "Is that where hope resides?" she asked. Mary nodded warmly. Indeed, even the most shattered earth can blossom anew. Suddenly, Rachel, lying on the sand, lifted herself up, slowly and without great force, but with a willing heart. She focused on the stream and, for the first time, relaxed her clenched fists. Rachel stood upright. The sky above grew lighter. The air changed around them. She murmured, "I once believed God was unfair, but what I truly needed was not justice. I needed restoration." Mary responded with understanding. Restoration never begins with finding answers. It begins with surrender. The desert's harshness softened, the wind calmed, and before them appeared a last path, darker than any before. Mary faced her with a gentler voice. "One more song remains. The most perilous one?" Rachel said nothing, simply inhaled deeply and stepped forward. The surrounding light vanished completely. No stars, no sky, no visible trail remained. Only a dense, heavy darkness enveloped them. Not the darkness that follows sunset, but the kind that sinks deep within the soul. It was not silent. Instead, it was hollow. Even the air felt motionless, as if the world itself had paused its breath. Mary's voice trembled beneath the immense weight of that void. "This is the final hymn," she whispered, "the most perilous of all." Rachel could scarcely move. The shadows encircling her were more than mere shadows. They were people, yet hollow, slumped against unseen barriers, eyes glazed over, lips sealed, no cries, no sobs, only surrender. Yet not the sacred kind. This was the defeat of one who believed the light would never return. "It is better if I simply vanish. God will not pardon me. I was destined to suffer. There is no point in trying any longer." Mary's voice quivered with grief. "This hymn does not wail. It does not scream. It merely relinquishes hope." Rachel's breath caught because one of those figures resting in the deepest corner of the emptiness was herself. Not a memory from the past, not a recollection, but the nearly lost future. She sat on the floor of a shadowed bedroom. Curtains drawn, phone silent, tears all gone, leaving only numbness. That evening, the night when the power was cut off, when she had not eaten for a whole day, when no one reached out, when she laid down thinking, "If I do not awaken tomorrow, it would be easier." Rachel moved closer, trembling. The figure did not look up. Mary placed a gentle hand on Rachel's back. Countless people sing this hymn quietly, not with drama or defiance, but with quiet resignation. Rachel knelt beside her shadow self. She extended her hand, and for a fleeting moment the darkness resisted, cold and heavy. But she persisted, embraced the figure, and softly said 3 words. "You are loved." The figure stirred. Gradually, like a faint spark recalling how to shine, Mary moved forward and pointed to something behind them. A single candle flickered softly, small, yet still burning. "Do you notice that?" Mary asked. "That candle is the reason she survived. Someone somewhere offered a prayer. A grandmother, a stranger, a child. Their hope kindled that flame." Rachel observed as the light grew stronger now, and the figure she held began to weep, not out of sorrow, but as someone finally finding home after being lost for too long. Mary knelt beside them. "No soul is ever truly isolated," she said. "Even in the blackest depths, love waits quietly for a single whisper, one faint call for help, and then the heavens rush to answer." The darkness started to dissolve, not like shattered glass, but like grief slowly settling over a battlefield. The candle transformed into a beam. The beam expanded into a sky. Soon Rachel was upright once again, surrounded by light, the air crisp, the ground soft beneath her feet. She faced Mary. Tears streamed down her face, but her posture was firm. "So many are still trapped down there," she said. Mary nodded firmly. "That is why you must return. You have heard the 6 hymns of sorrow. Now it is your time to sing the hymns of life." Rachel stood with renewed resolve. The ache in her heart softened into warmth. The emptiness turned into purpose. Mary extended 2 gifts, a glowing rosary and a tiny candle carefully placed in Rachel's chest. "This will be your protection," Mary said, "and this, your light." The world around them shimmered with promise. Rachel gazed down at the gentle glow within her heart and finally understood. She had endured a journey through darkness, but she was not going to remain trapped there. The shadows had faded, replaced by a light that was neither harsh nor dramatic, but soft and tender, like the sun quietly rising inside her soul. Rachel stood quietly. The flame Mary had ignited inside her chest did not burn fiercely. Instead, it radiated warmth, steady and alive. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt truly alive. There were no voices or memories crowding her mind, only a profound sense of peace. They found themselves once again in the garden, the very place from the beginning. But this time, Rachel perceived it with crystal clarity. The grass shimmered with dew, sparkling like distant stars, and the breeze whispered softly, filled not with sorrow, but with hope. The trees gently swayed, as if releasing a long-held breath of relief. Everything around her had transformed, or perhaps it was she who had changed. Mary remained beside her, wordless, with a smile full of kindness rather than victory. Rachel glanced at her hands. Those very hands that had once trembled with grief now pulsed with determination. "I thought I came here to be condemned," she murmured, "but all I found was love." Mary nodded in understanding. "You have walked through every lie that sought to define you, every shadow that tried to silence your voice, and yet here you stand." "No," Rachel answered. "I am not just standing. I am awake." The truth washed over her like a breeze through an open window. She was not saved from death. She had been reborn into life. Not her old life, where pain shaped the story, but a new one where even the scars carried light within them. "I carried countless untrue songs," she whispered, tears softly streaming down. "Melodies filled with shame, fury, and bitterness. I was unaware that I was even singing them." Mary stepped forward, gently placing her hand over Rachel's heart. "That is why heaven mourns those hymns. Not because they anger the divine, but because they persuade his children to exist as though unloved." The breeze swirled around them, enveloping them like a comforting shawl. The grass seemed to sway, the flowers unfurled, and the entire garden appeared to sigh along with her. Rachel tilted her face upward, eyes wide open, chest expanded, and soul laid bare. For the first time in many years, perhaps even decades, she felt complete. Not because every question had been resolved, not because the pain had vanished, but because she finally recognized her wounds as the spaces through which light had entered. Mary smiled and said, "Now you see clearly. The world does not require flawless people. It needs those who are healed." Rachel glanced around. The garden throbbed with endless potential. She was no longer the shattered woman collapsed on a kitchen floor. She was no longer the child who believed she was a mistake. She was no longer the mother who screamed silently into her pillow at night. She was a witness, with a candle still burning within her. "What comes next?" she asked. Mary's eyes turned toward a horizon gleaming like gold in the distance. "Now arrives the purpose for which you were sent back." The atmosphere shifted, not with a breeze, but with a solemn weight, as if heaven itself leaned in to hear. Rachel stood next to Mary. Behind them lay the garden, and ahead stretched a veil of light, delicate as mist but alive with energy. Beyond this shimmering curtain was something she could not name, yet she sensed it was home. Not the garden, nor the hospital, but the place where her true life awaited. Mary glanced at her and said softly, "You have passed through 6 hymns of sorrow. Now you must bring back something the world has forgotten, the sound of hope." Rachel's heart slowed its pace. "But who would ever listen to me?" she wondered aloud. "I am just a broken woman who doubted, who pleaded for answers, and only found silence." Mary's smile was gentle, yet fierce. "That is precisely why they will listen. Only those who have lived in darkness can speak of light without overwhelming others." Mary reached out her hands, holding in one a rosary emitting a soft glow, each bead pulsating like a heartbeat. In the other rested a small candle still burning inside a crystal case. "This," Mary said as she placed the rosary into Rachel's palm, "will be your shield against fear, doubt, and forgetfulness. And this," she continued, pressing the candle gently against Rachel's chest, "will be your flame. It will never extinguish, Not even when grief returns or when the world forgets what you have witnessed. It will remind you that you were there. Tears formed in Rachel's eyes, not from sorrow but from newfound resolve. "What am I supposed to do with these?" she asked. Mary stepped closer, placing both hands firmly on Rachel's shoulders. "You carry them into waiting." Rooms and grocery lines, transformed into exchanges with strangers and restless nights, shifted into places where others had lost their passion. She leaned closer, her eyes shining with a love so intense it almost caused pain to endure. "You will not preach. You will not convert. You will be a witness, a beacon, a woman who passed away and returned, bearing a saving whisper." The garden around them began to fade. The sky brightened, the layer of light thinned, and then Mary spoke for the last time. "When the world around you echoes the old hymns again, the songs of surrender, doubt, and bitterness, do not resist them loudly. Respond with the way you live." Rachel reached out and grasped Mary's hand one final time. "Will I remember this?" she inquired. Mary smiled gently. "Not everything, but enough." The light behind Rachel dimmed. The veil before her parted, and just before the garden vanished altogether, Mary's voice resonated like a lullaby woven into forever. "Now go, daughter. Sing the songs that bring healing. And remember, no one who sings with love ever sings alone." The light contracted inward like the final page of a sacred text. Just like that, Rachel returned, not with a crash, not with alarms, but with a blink. The harsh radiance of hospital ceiling lights replaced the gentle glow of heaven, the beeping of devices, the sterile aroma of alcohol and antiseptic, the cold feel of starched sheets against her skin. She took a single sharp breath, and her sister, sitting slouched in the chair beside her hospital bed, half dozing, she suddenly sprang upright, eyes wide with shock, her voice trembling. "She is awake. Oh my goodness, she is awake." Nurses hurried inside. Alarms sounded, not from fear, but from astonishment. A doctor let his clipboard fall to the floor, staring at Rachel as if witnessing something beyond explanation. 6 days spent unconscious. Her vital signs had never stabilized like this before. This must be a miracle. Rachel remained silent at first, not simply waking from sleep, but from what felt like an endless void. Gazing down at her hands, the skin and fingers looked the same but felt strange, as if they belonged to someone who had died and returned renewed. She made an effort to sit up, weak yet steady. When asked if she remembered anything, she quietly replied, "Enough." In the days that followed, the story spread quickly. Doctors labeled it mysterious. The family called it a prayer answered. Rachel called it pure grace. She didn't reveal everything she had seen immediately, believing some experiences were too sacred to share too soon. But she carried the silence within her. She spoke more slowly now, as if each word bore meaning. She met the eyes of others with a new depth, even those who were angry, resentful, or breaking apart. She listened deeply when someone confessed, "I don't know if I can keep going," because now she knew what to say. "I have been there. I have seen what lies beyond the darkest despair, and I return to tell you, it is not the end." At night, Rachel held a rosary, the very one Dylan had given her, though nobody else could see it shining. Close to her bedside, she kept a single candle burning, small and flickering, yet unwavering. Some saw it as a routine, others as a sign, but for her it was remembrance. A light from a different realm still flickering in this one. Rachel never sought fame. She did not author a book, nor did she launch a ministry, speak before crowds, or appear in television interviews. She simply existed, but in a way that was unlike before. Those who had not seen her for some time noticed immediately. The manner in which she entered a room, not with arrogance, but with a quiet presence. The way she listened as if your story was more important than time itself. The way she smiled as though she held secret knowledge of something wonderful yet to come, but certain to arrive. She returned to working at the clinic on a part-time basis. She delivered soup to patients living alone, held hands with mothers undergoing chemotherapy, and sat quietly with people who did not believe in prayer, but somehow felt a lightness after she left. She never imposed her story on anybody. Yet occasionally, someone would say, "I do not think I can continue anymore. I feel like I am fading away. I've been praying and nothing happens." In those instances, she would meet their gaze with the steady, calm flame now glowing within her and softly say, "You are not alone. Even when you cannot sense it, you are being supported. There is a candle lit for you at this very moment." Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it saved a life. Rachel became the kind of person who knew your name and always showed up, without waiting to be asked, who forgave without expecting an apology, who stayed beside the suffering not to mend them but simply to ensure they were not alone in their pain. She was not a preacher. She was a witness to compassion, to quiet endurance, to survival, to a light that refuses to be extinguished. Every night before blowing out the lights, she would touch the candle on her nightstand, a fresh one weekly but always burning, and softly say, "For the next one, whoever they are, wherever they may be, let them feel your presence." Rachel knew that somewhere out there, another soul was quietly singing one of those 6 silent hymns, and perhaps, just perhaps, her flame could guide them back home. There are hymns sung without any melody. They arise from wounds, from silence, from words that were never voiced. They sound like, "I am not worthy. God has abandoned me. No one notices me. I'm too tired to continue." These songs are heard in hospital rooms, in isolated apartments, in church seats where a smile hides a soul screaming inside. Rachel understood because she had sung these hymns herself. Yet now she sings a different song. It is not flawless, nor free from sorrow, but it is a new kind of hymn, one that rises despite the pain. A hymn declaring, "I am still here. I am loved even when I forget. My life holds value even on the quietest days. God listens even in the silence. Light still makes its way inside. And maybe, if you are reading this, you have been carrying one of those old hymns for far too long. Perhaps you bear guilt that was never truly yours to hold. Perhaps you are hoping for a miracle in the middle of an empty space. Perhaps you are only one prayer away from surrendering. But Rachel returned for you. Her journey is not about a woman who nearly ceased to live. It is about a woman who finally embraced life. And now it concerns you. What tune are you humming? If it is pain, heaven listens. If it is silence, heaven still supports you. Yet maybe, just maybe, it is time to change the melody. Even if it begins softly, even if you are not yet convinced, try singing, "I am still breathing." That signifies, I am still evolving. That means there is still brightness. That means I am not isolated. And as you do, someone else will hear your song and recall their own story. Somewhere, someone is sitting alone in darkness, singing a tune they never wanted to compose. Perhaps it sounds like, "I am weary. I do not matter. God must be absent." But you have embraced a different harmony now. Perhaps that is no coincidence. Perhaps you are meant to hear Rachel's tale so that you could become a light in someone else's night. So before you move on, before this instant slips away, do one small thing. Ignite something. It does not have to be a literal flame. Maybe it is a comment. Maybe it is a prayer. Maybe it is a message to someone on your mind. Or simply typing the words, "I will bear the light." Because when one person sings with hope, others begin to remember the melody. And maybe, just maybe, the world transforms one quiet song at a time. If this message has moved you, pass it along to someone who is still finding their voice in the midst of their journey. Write a comment, mention their name, light a candle, and keep in mind that anyone who sings from the heart never truly sings by themselves. We will meet again in the next story. Until that moment comes, keep shining bright.